All right, query time. So in the previous video, we ended on talking about queries. A query is nothing more than an instruction, right? In English, a query is defined as a question. And in SQL, queries are the way that we are going to put together our questions to which we want an answer from the database. A query is also known as an SQL statement. Those are just synonyms. Query is equal to SQL statement is equal to a query. Just different ways of saying the same thing. So if we look here, there is a very basic query. Select star from users. And if we were to break this down, what it's basically saying is, select us all of the information. So the star here is what we call a wildcard. We don't know what we want to get back, but just get us everything back. So select us everything from, so we're going to say where we want it from. And we know somewhere in our database, we are storing users, right? So select us everything from users. All right. That's pretty straightforward. So let's execute that. All right, so here we see select star from user. Over here, let's just copy paste all of this information. Just put it in your DB fiddle. Let's not worry about that just yet. And if we execute our command, select star from user, what we're going to get is a bunch of information because a bunch of user information was inputted. We can see they have an ID, they have a name, a last name, date of birth, sex, and a role. Awesome. So we can see here that select star from user is actually selecting us all of the information that we have around that user. And if we filtered and we just said name, what we would see happen is we would only get the name back. Amazing. So let's hop back into the slides and check out what a breakdown of a query looks like. So here, we've expanded the query a bit because we want to break down something a little more complicated. So let's say we did select name, so select the user's name from our data source, users in the database, where role is equal to manager. So this is new, right? Where role is equal to manager. This is what we call a condition. So where is our keyword. And we're saying where the role of the user is equal to manager, return us the name. I hope that makes sense. We're filtering data at this point. We're saying where the role is equal to manager of the user, give us back their name. And so if we were to break down this query and we looked at it line by line, select name is a clause, from users is called a clause, and where role is equal to manager is called a clause. These are just parts of the SQL statement or the query. So each line here is called a clause. And when we see select name, name is called an identifier. Now, what is an identifier? An identifier is just a different word for a part of the data. We know that users have a name. So when we select name, we're saying that name is the identifier that we want. And when we look at the last line, where role is equal to manager, our filtering line, this is a bit more complicated, right? Where is our keyword? Role is our identifier. But the line role equals manager is called a condition. So a condition is something that needs to be met. We're saying that, okay, a user has a role. That role needs to be equal to manager in order for us to get some data back. Pretty straightforward. And manager is called our expression. We are expecting that some of the roles may be equal to manager, but some may not be. So that's why we call it an expression, because we are making an assumption here that some of the roles are equal to manager. We want to filter based on our assumption. Awesome. So let's fire that real quick. All right, so we have our query here ready to go. So let's run it. And as you can see, we are getting back George, Janine, and Jason. So let's verify that that's actually what we want. So let's get back all of the information. All right, so we see here George, Janine, and Jason, and we see that the role is equal to manager. All right, that makes sense. But who else did we have here again? So let's go look at that. This is a way to put a line in comment. You don't want to execute that line. It's a quick way of turning lines on and off. So let's run that. So here we can see, okay, George is a manager, and then we had Macy and Bill who are employees. Okay, that makes sense. So let's turn that line back on. If we run it and we said, okay, now filter us the employees. Awesome. So we see Macy and Bill come up. All right, awesome. So now it's all starting to come together, right? We know how to build a very, very simple query. And I would push you to copy paste what's in here, put it in your dbFiddle, and try to write some simple queries where you filter and you select certain fields, and that way you can play around with it. So we've done our breakdown, and now we know all of the different parts that go into a query. And that's super powerful, right? Because now we've just said, select name from users where role is equal to manager. We asked a question and we got an answer back. This is what we call a declarative language. SQL is a declarative language. Now, what does that actually mean? Well, let's dive a bit deeper into that.